are we getting a packaged up story that maybe left out some of their transgressions or some of their less defensible things? I mean, I enjoyed Straight Outta Compton. I got sad news for everybody. Dr. Dre did not knock out a blood in a studio full of bloods. I don't believe for a second.
Hello, and welcome to the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Chasen, and like always, I'll be joined today by the team that brings you cupofteacritiques.com. Here, we'll dive deep into the productions and topics we broach on our website, so you can decide for yourself if they're your cup of tea. Ready for a deep look with a deep brew? This week's topic, biopics. Cup of Tea Critiques is a family affair, and I'm here with my brother Chris, my mother Reba, and my father Terry.
The movie about Bruce Springsteen was released, and it just got me thinking about all these biopics that have been released over the last few years, and they've been of music artists, obviously. And I think they've all been interesting. It's kind of, I know you can call it voyeurism, but it is interesting to gain some insight into what turns out to be the turmoil in a lot of these people's lives. But by depicting them, they humanize them. I think it's a good thing for fans to realize that these very gifted, very talented people are human beings, and they struggle with, some of the same kinds of things that everybody else struggles with, and dealing with some issues that we don't have to deal with. And so I love that these biopics humanize them in that way. I particularly love
A Complete Unknown.
Yeah, A Complete Unknown. I thought that was just a wonderful film about Bob Dylan.
I'm not sure they want to hear what I want to play, Johnny.
Who's they?
The men who decide what folk music is.
Well, I want to hear it. Make some noise, BD. Track some mud on the carpet.
But nonetheless, what is driving the industry to produce these movies, and why now? There's necessarily a distinction between what's driving, say, concert films in terms of things like Beyonce's movie and the Eras Tour, and the biopics. I'm not sure if the motivations for doing those are necessarily different.
I'm sure they are.
I think they're very different.
Okay,
Yeah.
I agree that the films are different. I didn't think the motivations were. So that's a great beginning. And so given that, that's how I wanted to lay the groundwork for this.
When we were talking about the motives, I think, nostalgia was mentioned, and I think that's heavy with biopics, the nostalgic element there. And I think it is with some concert films.
Mm-hmm.
Like they re-released Stop Making Sense, which was the one about the Talking Heads.
Right.
So I think with some artists who are, where the band is not together anymore, or the band doesn't perform as much anymore, or whatever like that, there's a nostalgic element to some of those concert films. But I think it's that motivation in particular is heavier in biopics, because some of those artists are deceased. Some of them can't perform anymore. So that it's more about, harkening back to a time where they were just a mega celebrity, as opposed to somebody that we kind of enjoy their music, but we don't necessarily pay attention to what they're doing now.
Biopics of musical artists, I think those will always be in demand. Part of the appeal of going to a concert is, as a fan, or the larger term fanatic of an artist, is the ability to be closer to them. And that's why people like to go to live concerts. In addition to enjoying their music, if they feel drawn to that particular artist. And I think biopics are a natural way of trying to get those stories out. And it's another opportunity for fans to feel and get closer to the artists that they've enjoyed, for all those years. I personally feel the best ones are ones that are done after those artists have gone through their big days. I don't mean that they necessarily need to have passed on, but if they've retired from the industry or whatever, and there's been a break between the height of their success, we can better appreciate the story that's being told as opposed to something immediately put together. I feel like those tend to be rushed and very slanted. But when there's been a break between the height of the success and when these films come out, we get more of the raw story. We get what I feel is more of the truth. And we see the obstacles that these artists went through, either self-made or the natural obstacles to achieve their success. And those are the best ones. But I always think that we will be interested in those stories.
Yeah, I hear you. I like biopics a lot, especially good ones. What I appreciate most about them is, I think it's something that your mother brought up earlier in terms of humanizing them, is I like what I learn about them as a person, good or bad. I like what I learn about them as a person because, again, it puts me in touch with the fact that they are a person. They're a human being, flesh and blood. They walk, up and down the street like anyone else. And I think there's a tendency with, artists, music or otherwise, to kind of put them in this category like they're completely different. And in terms of the talent and the things that they can do, yeah, okay, they are completely different, but they still are people and they have, concerns. It may not be what am I eating for, or will I be able to eat dinner tomorrow, but they do have, things that don't go right in their lives. And I like some of the background stories of how they got to where they were. A lot of people assume that artists were, they played a chord and all of a sudden they were famous and rich. And I don't remember, and several artists have said this over and over again, that people talk about them being instant or overnight success, and they go, yeah, you mean the 20 years of playing in dive bars before somebody actually bought my music, Okay, yeah, instant success. So, yeah, I do like biopics in particular, and so I'm more inclined to watch biopics than I am concert films. But, yeah, we saw, as you mentioned earlier, A Complete Unknown, really good. Fade to Black.
Relationship with someone I was very much in love with, very much in love with, but it couldn't work, we couldn't be together. And he ended up going back to his ex-girlfriend. And I don't really have anything to go back to be honest, so I was drinking a lot, playing pool, just being stupid, really. So the album's about going back to a black place in my life.
I didn't know anything about Amy Winehouse before that. I mean, I learned a lot, and how much of it is true, but I learned a lot about her as a person, and it made me more empathetic for about some of the problems that she had and how she, was and wasn't able to deal with those. But the artist that portrayed her, the music was fantastic. And, I don't know if all biopics are that well done, but that one in particular really made me appreciate, what a good production they made of that. We do want to go see the Springsteen movie, so want to see that. And then the last one I'll mention is the Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody. I thought that was really good as well.
Now, I'm working on a real big deal, so you just keep singing, and I'll take care of the money.
I'm gonna have to go on a world tour.
A huge-ass world tour. Your voice can handle it. I'll cut this deal, and we'll be fine. So you just keep singing, all right? When I land this thing, you'll see I'm still the boss.
I don't have a boss. But I do have a vacancy for a father. Everyone apply for that.
Whitney, can we get a picture?
No.
All right. I don't know how I feel about that. I have trouble, like, I mean, I feel like biopics are all right, like, as a genre. I feel like it a lot of times it's more about, I mean, you have a little bit of a built-in audience because what the fans of that artist are probably going to go see that movie. And it's also just, it becomes like a hunting for an Oscar sort of thing. I think a lot of actors do those roles to get potential Oscar recognition, which, I mean, of course, it's your career. you want to win an Oscar probably, but I appreciate the adding more dimensions to an artist. It starts to feel though like they can start to feel kind of repetitive, I guess. Like it's a lot of the same. They struggle with substance abuse. They had a turbulent, tumultuous family life. They all kind of start to feel a little repetitive to me when you watch a lot of them. And then there's the added element of, did that artist have any sway over this project? And so then it gets to a point of, well, are we getting the true story? Are we getting a little bit of are we getting a packaged up story that maybe left out some of their transgressions or some of their less defensible things? I mean, I enjoyed Straight Outta Compton. I got sad news for everybody. Dr. Dre did not knock out a blood in a studio full of bloods. I don't believe for a second.
That's right.
Put your glass down. I said, put the fucking glasses down. Hey, yo, slow your roll, Dre. Come on. This is why we got money. To act like we ain't got no goddamn sense, we could have did all this dumb shit back in Compton. But this what the y'all turn into. You sitting up here eating crab. Who the are you, huh? This is my motherfucking name on the wall, man. And y'all ain't here acting like y'all on my vacation. I got Pac in the next motherfucking room. Grinding, man. Working.
I don't believe that for a second.
Oh, that
No, not buying it. I think
Bro,
Dr. Dre
Bro, you
Dre
can get a visit from Tim to remind you not to forget about Dre, okay?
not buying it at all. I think in that particular movie, Ice Cube and Dre had a little bit of creative control over the storytelling, and they took advantage of that. So that's the thing with biopics. It's just like, okay, well, is it how unique does the story become, and how authentic is it? I guess.
Okay,
No, that's a fair point, Chris.
You bring up skepticism on biopics, depending on the subject matter's involvement. Using Straight Outta Compton as an example, I'll counter your skepticism with the idea of, in general, like, I still say that it's going to be a better product years after the fact than if it happened right afterwards. And part of my example of that is, let's go back to when we talked about Ali. Not trying to switch up things, but I'm more prone to see biopics on athletes because I'm drawn more to sports than I am to. I love music, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that. But when it comes to the stories, I tend to gravitate towards wanting to know the stories of athletes over musical artists. And with that in mind, I feel like Ali is a great portrayal of Muhammad Ali, partially because it was like he had not been in the spotlight the same way, still adored, but not in the same way. And I felt like it showed us his flaws as much as it tried to celebrate him. And so I don't go into biopics with the same kind of skepticism. Austin Butler did Elvis, and I haven't seen that one yet, but I have several friends that were extremely drawn to it from a nostalgia standpoint. You know, it's about Elvis, an artist from the past, a past that predates our existence even for some of my friends. But also, my understanding is it didn't show him as an infallible being. So I don't think we should go into these just assuming that it's a slanted view because of somebody's involvement or an estate's involvement, and give us the opportunity to try and see it. And they might come out and surprise you, Chris, with how much they do divulge that isn't in their best interest.
I didn't even make it through that one, but okay.
Well, damn. But there's others too, though. Like Mom and Dad, you guys are interested in Springsteen. Don't forget that Ray came out several years ago, and that one was also considered very well done. I brought up Elvis, and don't forget Bob Marley, One Love. Mm-hmm. That's another one. That's
enjoy both of those.
So,
to be fair, though. To be fair, we're not just talking about how well done the films are, because I can't think of any biopic I've seen, which are all the ones your dad mentioned. We've seen quite a few biopics. We're not saying that any of them were not well done. I think that all of them were very well done. In some cases, the artist had not already passed on. And so there is, to Chris's point, there is a chance that the artist had some control over the story. And for others, even in that case, if their family had some control over the story, who is to say that there are things they did not necessarily want to divulge? And that is the question think you'll always have with biopics, though. I think, when I did the review for Fade to Black, it's one of the things I spent a great deal talking about in the last couple of paragraphs, and that is that the thing is with biopics is you don't know what the truth is. You know what they presented to you, but you truly don't know what the truth is. But I think, though, I'm comfortable feeling that the whole thing isn't a lie. So I'm comfortable with that. So if 70 to 80% of it is truth, then that's good enough for me, because it's enough. And frankly, I think it's necessary to humanize these artists. I think, for example, about when the Jackson 5 first came out, when 1970 or late 60s, whatever it was, when they first came out and they started getting big, they were still going to public school. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the story. And Michael went to school one day and he was chased around the classroom. And that's when they realized that he could not be out in the public like that it was literally, they were literally risking his life to allow him out in public like that. And so we had this, we tend to objectify them after a while, throw them into this box, and they're this thing that you can just grab at and throw words at and, write articles about that are demeaning and cruel. And I think it's important to show that these are indeed human beings. The other thing I wanted to say, though, is that biopics didn't begin just over the last few years. I think that obviously there's been a trend over the last few years, but they didn't just begin over the last few years.
No, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, Woodstock, for example, is considered the first biopic. And I didn't realize that. And the reason it's considered the first biopic is because, yes, it was a concert film, but it showed behind the scenes footage of these people's lives, of these artists' lives, backstage over that 4-day period during Woodstock. So it wasn't just about them being on stage and performing. It was about what is going on in their lives backstage. And so I thought that was an interesting dichotomy. They did a front stage, backstage. And to that extent, it's considered a biopic. And it was actually edited by Martin Scorsese. Mm-hmm. And I think a guy named Michael Watley, I think is his name, was actually the person that directed it. And Martin Scorsese was a co-editor. That was 1970. And then Woodstock won an Oscar for Best Documentary. The next one was called The Song Remains the Same, about Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, I remember that.
About Led Zeppelin, and it was done in 1976. And then Stop Making Sense, which is something you brought up earlier, Chris, which focuses on the Talking Heads. It was a 1984 film, 1984 biopic about the Talking Heads. And the Talking Heads actually financed that film, even though they were approached by someone else to do the film. They were so game for it that they agreed to actually finance the film. Jonathan Demme did that film, and it was so good it won a Best Documentary Award in 1984 when it came out. So those were the first biopics. And then now we come to present day biopics, which are presented more in movie form. So none of this is new. That's my point.
Yeah, I don't mean to give the impression that these biopics are a new deal. I think we're currently dealing with a wave of them, and it's as we like to say, it's all trending at the moment. So we're going to continue to get a lot of these. I'm going to try and package this all together real quick, but I find it funny. I was trying to, when you made that point that it's not a new idea, I tried to see the biopics of present day, just trying to search that and get a list of them. And it's funny. Not an hour ago, an article was published on Collider talking about the 10 best music biopics of the last 5 years. And just the title alone implies the fact that there have been plenty made in recent past, in recent history. Mm-hmm. And so I say all that to say that I think, even looking at this list, I think what's happening is we are in a transition period in music. A lot of these biopics are 40 to 50 years after the height of their success and everything, with the exception being there's one on Whitney Houston on here, for example. So I don't count that one because she was in the 80s when she came out and stuff. But the point being is that I think what's happening is that we're 40 years from the 80s. So I guess she does fall in this category. And we're at a transition period where it makes sense to make these films. Enough time has passed from these people's success to go ahead and start putting out these really good long, dramatic stories. So these stories are all going to be over 2 hours long. And we'll probably see this wave come again in 20 years for all the artists from the 90s and early 2000s. And that'll be when we start seeing another wave of these films. So I don't know how much longer this will last. The other thing, too, is don't forget that some of them, unfortunately, have passed. And I say that with one name in mind. I'm expecting a biopic on Ozzy Osbourne to come out sometime soon.
For sure.
Because of his recent passing. And so that's the other motivation, is that as we lose these people from the past, either from the spotlight or overall, that's why I think we're seeing these waves come on through.
That's a good point. You know, if these movies will continue to come out as they have been over the last 5 years or so, it does suggest that I don't know how profitable these movies are in terms of, I have not looked at the numbers and assessed them against their production and marketing costs, so I don't know. But, and just because an article says it made money doesn't mean it was profitable. So I just want to put that out there. My point is that there is enough appeal. There are enough people out there, you know, going to see these films or watching these films via streaming for the studios to say, let's keep making them. There is something to that.
Is there an artist or band that you would want to see a biopic of?
I was thinking about that. The Eagles. I would love to see one about the Eagles.
Yeah.
The Eagles are just Don Henley.
The Eagles.
The group I want to see a biopic on, I want to see Aerosmith. I want to see that one portrayed. I want to see that I want to see that cinematically portrayed, and I want to know all of the bad to go with the good, because I have enjoyed their music for years, and I have a feeling that would be a fun one too.
Biopic for me would be the two I'd wanted to see are John Coltrane and Little Richard. Those are probably the two biopics I want to see. There was a Little Richard miniseries that was produced in 2000 for TV. It starred Leon, but it was directed by Robert Townsend. So I mean, there is a miniseries, but I would like to see a biopic about Little Richard's life.
Interesting.
Biopics also give the opportunity for us to maybe hear unreleased music by these artists, because you know that these studios have, you know, backlogs of recordings and such. And that is another reason why I would look forward to the biopic over a concert film, because I know for a fact I shouldn't say for a fact, I can go with more certainty that I'm going to hear some music that I possibly haven't heard before by an artist I know I enjoy. Aerosmith has a catalog of about 100 songs that are popular alone, and then 400 total that they've recorded. But a biopic about Aerosmith may increase the number of released tracks to 405, because they may introduce 5 tracks that we've never heard before. And that's what I'm talking about. Is the opportunity I would look forward to hearing. Thanks so much for listening to the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast. Honestly, we could go on and on like we do at our dinner table, but we appreciate you figuring out your cup of tea along with us. Make sure you rate and follow us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Also, leave a comment telling us about a favorite biopic of yours. You can stay in the loop on all things COTC by subscribing on our website at cupofteacritiques.com. You can also find us on Facebook, check out our Instagram at Cup of Tea Critiques, and on Letterboxd at COT Critiques. For Reba, Terry, and Chris, I'm Brandon. We'll see you next week for another Deep Look with the Deep Group.